I thought I'd make an attempt to put on record whatever comes to mind from what I can remember about the real relationship I had with Leslie Katz, which began when I met her at the Pennsylvania Governor's School for the Arts. She was introduced to me by Ellen Berkowitz, had a brother named David Berkowitz who liked to drink a lot of orange juice. She looked very nervous when I met her. She seemed like a strange, intelligent girl. I wasn't um, really encouraged by her to approach her, so I kept my distance. After the governor's school, um, she looked me up to see if I wanted to help put on a production at Ellis Girls School. It was a very fateful day because Kathy Key had agreed to dance my Metamorphosis project. And Kathy Key was among the most desirable women I'd ever seen. But Leslie took to me romantically. And she was very dedicated to her schoolwork. She ended up graduating valedictorian, and I would spend my evenings basically watching her at her father's house that overlooked the steel mills up on a hill in Pittsburgh. She had, red hair. She was always medievally dressed. I would watch her do her homework until 2 or 3 in the morning. We'd start making out till it was time for her to go to school. I would walk home. Occasionally, she would make time for my thoughts. I'd play King Crimson and talk about that. I didn't really have a memory of what happened to me in Highland Park. I always associated with her school of fish after we moved. She was friends with in childhood with Martin Alderman, Miles Kirshner, who was the #2 attorney student in 1984 from Martin Ordenberg's Coven, I should say. #1 was Albert. He lived by a place that was loudly marked exterminators on Bomb Boulevard. Told me one time that I was the type of person he wouldn't want on a dangerous mission. I was always so sick of their intellectual preposterings. But I had been raised to think of myself as a piece of, rejection. And that had an effect on me. It was like the tin drum. I became sullen and introverted. Girls would sometimes call me up behind Leslie's back, even some of her closest friends, to see if I wanted to get acquainted under the sheets. And I was deaf. But, the idea that they could vie with me on an intellectual level, if I wasn't deaf, was ridiculous. I never thought that. So I'd play jokes, make catty remarks, take myself about as seriously as they took me, which was not at all. Because I had things on my mind. Leslie was actually teaching me a great deal because I would read her essays and learn from them. She was, after all, valedictorian of a prestigious school, but it's the school that was implicated. One of the Gutter Snipes' mothers worked there and was implicated in with John Schulman, who she also had a partnership with, in museum theft. Of course, people like Baden will do anything for the Jewish community, even let them rob us, even let them torture somebody like me, murder my father. which I guess is what happened. I mean, I was living by Sharon Samuels, who had introduced me to Gail Burstyn. Leslie must have been the gal in the script, and that's kept out of history, even though it's very significant. And the NAACP took up with it. Apparently, quite a few black people knew about the whole plan. Right up to poisoning me in the mouth. The Green Party is run by Black Panther in Seattle. Rosa Clemente is sort of a tattooed hard rock with all this swag about Latinos and that. And they apparently knew. They're the ones who kept it taboo on discussing Diamond Gaulis's anthrax and appearance at the WTC and the call from one of the governor's schoolgirls named Dia to me from Dermond when the fateful Lenin Day arrived. And Cliff Robertson above the World Trade Center and whatnot. Now, Flippy Tune has a picture of Gail Burstyn on the cover of one of its records. Yet he bends over backwards, strutting that Leslie Katz was so violated, it was like rape. I could feel it when I dropped my pick, man. He has a frenzied venom that he controls people who are his subordinates with. They start talking in accents, and they start getting this distant expression. I mean, it's annoying to say the least. They're all wise owls. One of them tapped his ears at me when I said I didn't believe the murder of Martin Luther King was inevitable, when he gloated. So I would walk there and then I would walk home. Sometimes it was very dark. It was a long, windy road by where Jeannie lives. I didn't know at the time. But I would walk it long enough for me to play in my imagination or sing quietly to myself, supper's ready. It was a long, windy stretch. It took me 25 minutes to get to the park and another 15 minutes to get home. You know, sometimes, usually 4 in the morning it was, because she needed a couple of hours sleep. Um, she'd cry over mouth problems. She'd get so frustrated she wanted to solve them, and her father would very patiently work with her. He was an intelligent man who would talk to me over dinner. Arnold was his name, had the name of the Katz Business School. And she would run for the bus when she was late somewhere. They were always late when it came to social occasions. That was the funny thing about them. We'd be there somewhere at 8 o'clock, and they would just be getting ready at 8:45. But it's not that she ever changed. She had engaged me in a sort of philosophical framework about what was going on between the two of us. She had poems she would share with me about the situation, like "I love you and it makes me rather dull." And I could see that she was sort of gagged with the gang of Jewish kids who were playing on my reputation. When The Wall came out, she and David Myron really had a party about that. Sometimes she would get carried away with her friend Amy Shapiro. They'd start chanting really ugly things. And I wouldn't go along with that, but she made me jealous with their obsession with Jackson Brown and stuff. They always say I was very jealous, but I controlled it pretty well, I think. The idea that I would show up places unannounced was just because I didn't have the power to call by phone. Yeah, I used my discretion. In that age, surprise visitors were fun. So I wasn't chased off by any means. She introduced me to a strange, mystical lesbian from Colorado when she was finally finished with me, who had an aquiline nose and could convey the aspect of ethereal that one associates with Lenin. She ended up online with the Dalai Lama. She owns a place called Sounds True. And when I visited her, I got my first glimpse of the violence in the lesbian community because one of them, when I caught her eye, really came at me like a buzzsaw. And that's the sort of trippy individual that Flip pays good money to. Toya Wilcox would sing her hymns of praise, castrating the rejected lover because he left the um, Virgin of Babylon untouched. That was their mentality. It got sown through Carnegie Mellon. They were calling it lesbian avengers. What were they avenging? One of the kids who Ringo Starr justified, who was a friend of Andelman and Katz, um, raping Janie about was at Harvard, and he got into it with some girl over a one night stand, that went awry in the morning. And look at these crocodiles. Ricci was saying I was playing saxophone somewhere. There was a day where I played saxophone there for years. What's his problem? But then they hired this kid, right? They're using this kid who was thousands of miles away from me as their justification for instant karma, the rape of a retarded girl, and slashing Shannon Harps and murdering Circe and all the things they've done. And then they hire him, so he was a hireling through the whole thing. These were, the invincible retardation of the city police in a place like Pittsburgh or Tacoma lays waste to any hope of redress in the matter. Even after Shulman was arrested, they couldn't get out of their fixate, that I was homeless for my own misdeeds. I was homeless because Shulman's gang had claimed I was the reckless driver at Kelly School. I was a furious passenger, quit the job over the incident. Oh no, poisoning me in the mouth isn't getting retribution for testifying. Oh no, they wouldn't consider that angle because I didn't like Reagan. Oh, he wouldn't want me, his top law school students wouldn't want me on a dangerous journey. Oh my goodness, aren't they precocious? And Nordenberg is now teaching me about the nature of reality at Burn Hollow Bridge. Wow, Pittsburgh. We didn't go to baseball games or anything like that. I can't remember the sort of things we did. Occasionally we went camping. I took her to Bob Dylan, who she was more sensible about than me. She absolutely hated him. God, it was impressive. I would have been. I was surprised. I thought she would like Bob Dylan. She hated him. God, it was hilarious in some ways. Now, especially in retrospect, now that I hate him, she had better judgment than me. But, there were things we did together. She was very, 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 very pretty in her strange way. She was strange looking, but she was very pretty in her strange way. And I knew that I was being cheated of what was necessary to build into your character to become a career man. And that whatever had happened to me in childhood was nailed together by Pittsburgh to blackmail me all through my life. I knew that on a very subconscious level. But the way that I felt about it was it's their uh, box of junk. It really didn't pertain to me psychologically, meaningfully. I was convinced that they were up to something. That it was Bronstein and Swimmer was one of the things I was convinced of because he was always leering at me, and she was built to spread leers about her victims by, and I was clearly her target. But I couldn't understand it was the point. I didn't understand what it was. I was always told to trust the Jews, and here was Leslie enraptured in my arms all the time, so I didn't really have any particular reason not to trust them. You know, Gail Burstyn was just a name from the past, some girl who was always taunting me as not liking her enough. There were all those letters, but my brain had welded shut. She even used to remark, there was you then and there's you now, and there's nothing in between. And I attributed the sophistication of her analysis to her growing up. But she was obviously taunting me, and it got more and more vicious and became extremely puzzling when it became clear that Clinton was her stage manager and that Trumpy Toon and Clinton were all out to protect her and Schulman. That was very strange. But when Oliver Stone showed up as a friend of Putin, I started to realize that it was a Ouspensky circle that was going on, just as there's a Vienna circle at the University of Pittsburgh, esoteric circuit, Ira used to call them. Another one who was very important to the charade was a little more aloof. He went to Princeton. His name was Steve Langer. Steve Langer was would visit Leslie. He would say things to me. Like I asked him, what do you want, from life? And he looked at me and he said, blood. Alan Berkowitz asked him if he would ever move, or I asked him if he would ever move to Israel. He said, fat chance. And Alan said, what do you mean, fat chance? What do you mean, fat chance? And she had a poem called Baker's Dozen, straight from the oven was the line. It made me think of Clem Baker because there were sort of overlaps in language, but I didn't get to understanding overlaps in language. Like when I sent my letter to Posvar, which I should have put in the Pit News. And Megna Wen took it to Louis Lapham's office, and I sent it to Painter Gabriel. I didn't realize that I had named Ronnie and Casper. I thought I had named Ronnie Zazinski and Casper Owski, but I thought of them as Ronnie Zazinski and Kasparowski. Kasparowski. I didn't see the Ronnie and Casper in there, but Posvar obviously did because they were really agitated, frightened. Al Gore type state troopers zooming down the bus lanes to his office after I sent that. And he put in the Miles Davis exhibit and gave me sort of a look one day when he crossed paths while he's standing there. He was standing there as if to ascertain that I saw the exhibit and associated it with him. But he lived out where Mel Gibson's father did. And Gibson, of course, was humming to get his idea of conspiracy out about with Lenin pictures on the wall and stuff. And of course, Miles has a double entendre. All of these people were Miles happy. And Hitler, Reagan himself, had Miles Kirshner take me to D.C. to wave to me. And Ono was obviously working with Gail Burstyn, as was John Lennon. It was a fake out routine. They pretended John Lennon got shot. They pretended Reagan got shot. And then they constructed their alibi, prosecuting me about Leslie Katz and so on. It's a relatively old droll story, but Leslie came over the first time she came over. We did some painting together and stuff. The idiosyncratics of queerdom have talked to her extensively and know all of these details to trigger flash memories for their extortion. But you see, it's a psychopathic junta. How can you take any kind of solace from people who demand you prove your loyalty to them by being willing to let them spit in your food? I mean, which is the mindset of Seattle. That's how mature they are. That's their level. Like when they ruined me psychologically with the neuroplasm, and then we're saying, bark at us, you have freedom of speech. They would like take military temper tantrums and things I'd put in my poetry, you know. And in other words, they knew they were hackling in their applause and knew that I didn't. You know, it was like Justin Vicari was calling it insult therapy or something, writing these poems called Bad Blood. Shulman wrote a poem about mayors during plague years. And this all emerged while they were setting up the idea that Reagan didn't know. His attorneys had me on hand. He says he was shot by them, but he wants to work with them, framing me for Leslie Katz because it's personal. Like that's probably Clint Eastwood said, made pretend, but he's the one who called where eagles stare, where doubles stare, and Lennon called it double fantasy. So it's a con job from Penn Disney. It's all a con job. It's holy war. They're playing the icons of the celebrity superstate, releasing AIDS and COVID, then saying it's taboo to talk about Diamond Gallus's anthrax, and photo of herself with a stiletto at the World Trade Center, and Cliff Robertson about, then they murder Cersei and two more Kennedys. Oh, don't talk about that. That's taboo. That's no. They won't like that's the union. I ain't gonna sit too well with them. No, you don't talk that way because the union got tribute from Ms. Goto. Oh. And you were the one who was Licky Chops. We sent you a fake fiance to make Licky Chops cinema because you was having some fun. I was, when I saw, I didn't know that Rose was a virgin. When I saw that she was, I was a little bit wary of that. But I trusted Peter Gabriel and Robert Fripp. I never would have thought that they would justify something like Yale Burst. Quite the contrary. When I found out that they were behind it, I knew that I was in an existential dilemma. So what I did was uh, went to the police. What happened is that I found these letters. They look like homicidal letters. And I was investigating a premeditated AIDS testing war game on Mount Desert Island. And they had some chick, Sicilian chick, come on to me and say, no, they were just fucking with you. And Pittsburgh's like, oh, they were just fucking with you. And everybody likes that. It's Pittsburgh's neatness. They were just fucking with you, man. And I never really felt humiliated by what Leslie did per se until she said things like, why should you get another chance? I was like, what are you saying? You make it sound like you wanted me to rape you, which, one of the employees of John Schulman, Christelia Monhasi, which is like German and Nazi when you write it down, said to me one night, I want to be raped. I want to be raped. I mean, I wasn't going to oblige her, but this was soundtrack from the Neva Corporation that was impinging on the persona's experience. Leslie Katz would go out in the woods and scream, gonna rape, kill, pillage, and burn, gonna rape, kill, pillage, burn, and eat babies. So, the obnoxious Swarthmore voodoo syndicate who make up this story, oh, you're the one who said rape and you were hysterical, liars about the whole situation. No, and I didn't realize that Rosa would be party to something that sick, but she definitely was. That was a terrible criminal operation. Seattle has pulled for years. It's all a wall to protect them. I don't understand that in the least, and I could give two shits what they think intellectually. I don't respect their minds. I don't like them as people, and I don't respect their minds. I think they're sinister, cruel, weird people. I'm not surprised now that penal labor was their god.